So, I'm gonna. There's two topics of one here. One is tonight's action. The Devils are in Edmonton. So the Oilers are right now, I think, 7 points out of the playoffs, and they're at home against a Devils team that has been vastly over producing in terms of wins, points, goals, you name it. So I expect a flip. We'll see if there's a flip. We'll see if Edmonton comes out and has the kind of game we know the Oilers have in them. We'll see, and we'll see if the heat gets turned up on both Coach McClellan and GM Chiarelli. There was a statement I made last night about patience. And I didn't necessarily mean Oilers' patience with the team. I mean with this squad this year. So I want to make clear on that. That I think it's still early in the season, and I still think they can turn around. They can still get it together. I still believe in that. And I would want to see this team with Sekera in the lineup before I say, oh yeah, no, this team sucks, and just write them off. In other action tonight, the Nashville Predators are against Anaheim. In a matchup between two teams that have underwhelmed thus far, but Anaheim's had injury issues that explain it. Nashville's just seemed to be going through the motions in certain games. And Rene's been playing well. A lot of players have been playing relatively well, but just the whole is not worth the sum of its parts right now, and we'll see how long that continues. But it'll be an interesting game. Now, I'm not off until 8:30 tonight, so that'll be, well, I may get home for the end of the Nashville-Anaheim game, but I know I'm gonna miss the New Jersey-Edmonton game. I'll be listening on the radio. Of course, on the radio, you get that experience you had when you were a kid, where you're listening to the radio on, experience I had as a kid listening to the radio for hockey games because they weren't all on television. So I would actually crank up the radio, listen to Jim Robson and Tom Larscheid, and experience the game in a different way. The problem is, of course, you're relying on what they're telling you, so you can't see it for yourself. So it does remove my ability to see just how great a save was, just how great a goal was, because announcers may play up a goal that they say was great that wasn't that great, and there's the potential that they exaggerate. So the other thing I do is on the NHL app on my phone, I try to make sure that I listen to both feeds if they're available. So I'll listen to one feed for a while and I'll switch over to the other, just to try to make sure that I'm getting an even impression on how the game is going, rather than just one team's point of view. Certain announcers may sound a little bit biased. They're entertaining, but they may sound a little bit biased when you're watching or listening to a broadcast. So you want to make sure that you're getting both sides of the story. But the other topic of conversation, and TSN's got a big article on their front page right now, what's wrong with Carey Price? And they go through the fact that it's his worst start to his career. He's had 11 games this year. Where is it? It's in here. 11 games, 3-7-1 record, 877 save percentage, and a goals against average of 3.77. There's a lot of 3s and 7s in there. Now, Carey Price is 30 years old. So I don't see this as being the sign of a decline. Goalies traditionally are at the top of their game later in life than forwards and defensemen. If he was a forward and we were talking about this huge decline, I'd be concerned. But as a goaltender, I'm not entirely concerned. What I've seen in Price's games is that he's allowing a lot of rebounds that his defense aren't clearing. He is facing more high-quality shots this year, I think, than he did last year. And there's just something in his game that seems off. And they have interviews in here with B-Raw, and B-Raw says this is the worst he's looked, no doubt. It's almost like he has lost his toolbox, having a hard time fighting the puck. He's late on rebounds. And for me, it's that he's been allowing a lot of rebounds. And he is sort of out of position. He is off. And this is where a really good goalie coach should be diving in, figuring out what's going on up here, because I think a lot of it is psychological with Price. When he went through that rough patch last year, and I have a video on my channel on Carey Price's struggles and where he's at and where he's going, and there were a lot of people who sort of jumped on it and said, well, he'll get it figured out. He's still one of the best in the league, and absolutely I agree, and that's still the case here. But it's getting to be a longer streak of issues. Now, I think it's affecting him psychologically that the team hadn't been scoring very much at the other end of the ice. I think that put more pressure on him, and maybe he was squeezing his stick a little tighter and trying to be absolutely perfect and everything. And when you're overanalyzing every move you make, you're going to make mistakes. And I think that's a lot of what's been going on here. Says here, whenever he's gone into the ditch, the Canadians have always got off to such a strong start. He'd already established himself as a dominant force. He's under a microscope, so it doesn't help. Carey Price is so good and so round. When he's on his game, he looks casual in the net. When he's bad, he looks really bad. A good example of that from my Vancouver days is Kirk McLean. Kirk McLean was a stand-up goalie. There wasn't a lot of movement when he was in net. He was square to the shooter. So when he allowed goals, he looked worse than another goaltender who was a butterfly goalie and diving across the net for that spectacular save. So the guy who's diving across the net and still misses the puck, as opposed to Kirk McLean, who's a stand-up and moves over and misses the puck. That butterfly goaltender who allowed the exact same goal, people will be like, man, he tried so hard, he was so close. McLean, they'd be like, he didn't even try. He didn't even try. So in Carey Price's game, that could be a perception as well. So because he's casual in net and because everything normally goes right for him, when it goes bad, it does make him look worse than he is. These numbers are worse than he is. Again, when you've got a defense that's missing what Markov brought, when you've got a defense that is having issues with clearing those rebounds out, he's facing more second chances, and he's well aware that the team's been struggling all over. Now that the scoring has started to come, now that they're starting to get those goals, and it looks like guys like Pacioretty, Gallagher, Shaw, etc. are waking up and getting their game in gear. Even Galchenyuk over the last week has shown signs of life. Now more of the focus is going to shift to Carey Price. And as long as his numbers are down, that is only going to crank up from week to week to week. I do expect it to get better. I think he needs a big game against a team like a Pittsburgh or a Chicago, somebody who's got a tradition of winning over the last 10 years, somebody who's a big rival. Maybe a Boston game could turn him around, because his record against Boston is good. Montreal's record against Boston in general is stupid good. So that's the kind of thing Price needs, and all he needs is one really solid game against a really solid opponent, and he'll turn it around. I believe that. So his movement's a little off. He's a little late with things, and I get it, and I agree with both Bira and McLennan, and they know a hell of a lot better than I do. I will definitely include a link to this article in the description for this video. But a lot of this is psychological. I really believe that. A lot of this is psychological. And with goaltenders, they're more vulnerable with this kind of thing, not because they're the weirdos on the team. That is true, though. But because when a forward is a little off or a defenseman's a little off, there's somebody there covering. So let's say Chara has an iffy game in Boston and McAvoy backs him up. Well, when you're the goalie, there's nobody to back you up. But there's about 17,000 fans ready to pounce on you if you have a bad game. Home, road, doesn't matter. Depending on the city, you've got a bunch of fans who are just ready to yell at you if you have a bad game. So when you're off as a goaltender, it is magnified above and beyond if a forward's off or a defenseman's off. Especially a forward. You can have a first-line center who's having a poor season. Second-line center's having a great season. You don't notice the first-line center is playing poorly as much. So, again, let me know what you guys think. I think Price works this out. I really have no doubt about that. I take no joy in seeing him not play well. And I think Montreal, while I still see them missing the playoffs at the end of the day, they'll get better. And you know, it's just a matter of figuring this out. And I think the blue line has a lot to do with Carey Price's statistics. But Montreal fans, let me know what you guys think. You guys see far more of the action than I do with him and with the Canadians. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.